Okay, everyone. This is the regular business meeting of the Guam PUC Commission, June 25th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. First order, well, all commissioners are present this evening. First order of business is GWA docket for approval of the minutes of May 7th, 2026 and May 21st, 2026.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve minutes, subject to corrections.
Second?
Second.
Joe seconds, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is GWA docket number 2607, petition to approve a fund increase for change order number 6 for the Guam Surface Water Treatment Plant Rehabilitation Project. We have a legal counsel report and a proposed order. Mr. Pangilian, do you have something to say?
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I unfortunately have to recuse myself from the next two docket items, GWA 2607 and GWA 2608, as my law firm represents GWA pending litigation, so I'm not able to participate.
Thank you, Mr. Pangilian, and you're recused. Anthony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in this docket, GWA is requesting that the PUC approve change order number 6 of the GWA Sumitomo Mitsui Construction Company Limited. Just like that. For the Guam Surface Treatment Plant Rehabilitation. The amount of change order number 6 is $402,968, which will increase the total contract amount to $12,532,153. GWA is planning on paying change order number 6 using bond funds. Now, the Guam water treatment plant was originally constructed in 1991. It was retrofitted and modernized in 2007 and 2010. Guam currently operates a membrane filtration treatment system that basically turns raw river water into safe drinking water. It's then pumped into reservoirs that provide drinking water to the southern areas of Guam, principally from Bucan, using that. Guam is designed to produce up to about 4 million gallons of treated drinking water a day. Now, since 2015, in our GWA's master plan, it is planned to replace Guam's aging equipment and systems. Because all of them are operational at the time, they do require major improvements in refurbishment because its condition back in 2016 limited Guam's capability, operability, reliability. You probably all heard the term humidity plant because whenever there's a lot of rainfall, weather, and things are around, that plant usually has to be shut down. This is what they were trying to solve with the improvement. So, October 25th, 2022, basically the CCU issued a GWA resolution which authorized GWA's management to spend an amount of $4.6 million for the project, and issuing the petition to PUC for authorization the GWA docket number 23-01, the PUC authorized GWA to issue a solicitation. December 2022, GWA issued the solicitation, but received no responses. GWA issued a second solicitation. It received 2 bids in response, and determined that Sumitomo was the lowest responsive bid. However, instead of the 4.6 that we're expecting, Sumitomo's bid was 9.1 million, substantially higher. On August 29, 2023, the CCU issued a resolution which authorized GWA's management to award the contract to Sumitomo in the amount of $9.1 million with a 10% contingency. This will become important later on. Of $918,377.07 for a total of $10.1 million using bonded USMCA grant funds. On September 28, 2023, in GWA docket number 23-12, the PUC authorized GWA to enter the contract for the amount of $9.1 million and with the 10% contingency fee of $918,877.70. So once again, the total is $10.1 million, using various funds, including bond funds, to pay that total $10.1 million cost. GPA subsequently issued change order number 1 in the amount of $413K, September 24th, 2024, on January the 17th, 2025, GWA issued change order number 2 for the amount of $153,960. On January 28th, 2025, the CCU authorized GWA's management to incur an additional $2,021,530 of the contract, and this increased the project's contingency amount to, according to the CCU, $2.5 million, and it increased the total contract cost to $12,129,185.64. GWA's management did not seek or obtain the PUC's authorization for this increase. On July the 15th, 2025, GWA issued change order number 3, now to the amount of $1.9 million. Basically, this change order reduced the remaining $351K or so in the original 10% contingency fee that was authorized by the PUC to negative $1.6 million. So that was the deficit. Change order number 3 also increased the total contract cost to $11.7 million. On August 13th, 2025, GWA issued change order number 4, the amount of $199,777.11. This increased that deficit to $1.8 million and increased the total contract cost to $11.9 million. Now, on January the 29th, 2026, GWA issued change order number 5 for the amount of $160.5. This reduced the 10% contingency, but basically increased that deficit to $2.8 million. And it also increased the total contract cost to $12.1 million. Now, on April the 6th, 2026, Superintendent submitted change order number 6 for the amount of $402,968. On April the 17th, 2026, the CCU issued a resolution authorizing the GWA to expend the additional 400 or so K on change order number 6. This would increase the total contract amount to $12.5 million. The CCU also authorized the use of bond funds. Now, we're going back to the 10%. Okay. So the issue that GWA just filed in opposition to today is paragraph 19 of my report. And basically, I found that GWA was required to pay the PUC's prior approval to expend the additional $2.3 million on change orders 3, 4, and 5. Basically, PUC only authorized GWA to expend the amount of $9.1 million on the contract, and it limited the contingency to 10% of that amount. That was the express contingency that was there. And that was for the total of $10.1 million. Now, GWA should have, when they issued change order number 3, and after the CCU had increased their original 10% contingency, I guess all the way up to 20%, they should have sought to obtain PUC's approval back, but they didn't do so. Now, GWA claims that, and they will continue to claim this evening, that it was authorized to incur contract expenses up to 20% over the $10.1 million authorized by the PUC under their contract review protocol. That is correct. However, that's what their contract review protocol says. However, as I point out in my brief, they only asked for a 10% agency in their petition. The CCU, as the governing board of GWA, only authorized them a 10% contingency. Now, that's important, here's why. So the governing board, although they could go up to 20%, as the governing board, they could say, no, we don't want you to go over 20, we can limit you 10%. Okay, that's your contingency here. And otherwise, under regular corporate law, if management exceeds that 10% amount, let's just say it's not GWA, let's say it's any other corporation on Guam, it's called an All Providers Act, an act conducted without the authority of management for the board, and that's what we would have. So, in essence, that 10% contingency, although it is lower than the 20% under the contract review protocol, is what GWA asked for in its petition. It's what the CC authorized, and the PUC respected that, and gave that 10% contingency. Now, they're going to argue it should be the full 20%, but under the contract review protocol, it does, the GWA's contract review protocol, the very last paragraph on the last page. It says, PUC administrative law judge is authorized to interpret the meaning of any provision of this order, GWA's contract review protocol, in furtherance of the contract review process. Now, if we're going to really defend that 20% contingency that they're allowed, look at the effect if we were to buy the argument that they could go 20% beyond the 10% contingency fee. Well, 10% contingency plus 20% contingency, that's a 30% contingency fee. So that actually violates the contract review protocol. It goes beyond it. I did the numbers. They didn't quite hit the 30% mark. If you look at the 918K contingency plus what they spent on change orders 3 to 5, it actually comes up to a 28% contingency. Okay, that's good. So almost hit it, but it didn't quite hit it. So that's my finding, and of course they have the opportunity to refute that, and they're going to argue that somehow they're allowed that 30% contingency is equivalent to 10% but I have a different opinion, and mine is also based on my interpretation of the contract review protocol, and I'm merely trying to defend that 20% now, and it's not exceeded. Nevertheless, change orders 3 to 5, I looked at them very closely. They answered the RFIs. I found that they were all reasonable, prudent, and necessary. Basically, expended about $2.3 million. And it was reasonable in light of the extensive work, which required demolition and removal of quite a few further pieces of infrastructure out there. It also upgraded the drinking water treatment plant to modern standards. And we used the product for long-term shutdowns. And what was also necessary because it was required by the law recreated result of its 2024 sanitary survey of the plant. I found change order number 3 to 5 were reasonable, prudent, necessary. So had they come before the PUC, it was very likely the PUC would have granted that particular, because it does meet the reasonable, prudent, necessary standards set forth in the contract review protocol. Now, for the $402,968 this year for change order number 6, well, they are going to have to approve that because they've gone well over the 20% contingency. Okay, and I found that this amount for change order number 6 is reasonable. This is going to require extensive work as well, inclusive of permitting for river dredging, including the hardening of river embankment and the purchasing and installation of exhaust fans in each of these 6 chemical operational building rooms. It also has some minor work as well. Now, GWA's resident project representative reviewed change order number 6 and found that the $402K cost was reasonable and within the prevailing construction rates. Hence, I found change order number 6 to be reasonable. I also found it to be prudent. Currently, the high accumulation of sediment in the upstream of the treatment plant be carried into a water pumping station. Can't speak for who, that shuts the plant down. And this should help mitigate that effect. So I found the change order to be prudent. I also found it to be necessary because obtaining the permits for the river cleaning and dredging and hardening of the river embankment ahead of actual construction is required. The law this will also basically mitigate the risk of delays caused by unforeseen permanent issues once the physical construction activities has begun. So it's my recommendation that the PUC ratify change order numbers 3 to 5 and their $2.3 million total cost. And it's also my recommendation that the PUC approve the fund increase for change order number 6 in the amount of $402,968. And I also recommend that the PUC should require the request PUC approval for any future change orders on this project. Thank you, Subject, for your question.
Thank you, Anthony. GWA, any comments?
Supposed to be Mary Green.
Agreed.
Okay. I'll ask legal counsel to address the objection that was filed with regard to the ALJ's report.
Thanks,
Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. Thank you, the PUC Council, ALJ Camacho. So first, I'd like to thank Attorney Camacho for addressing the objection that was just filed today. So, we bring forth the objection really not to push back because it's clear that the recommendation from the ALJ is to ratify the change orders and the total amount that we requested. But the purpose of the objection is sincerely to seek clarity. When we file to the PUC, we of course strive and make every effort to comply with the protocol. And so when we comply with the protocol, in this instance, we had every good faith belief that we were in compliance with the protocol. So when the ALJ or the PUC's council report came back and said we violated and we didn't seek authorization beginning from change order number 3 through 5, we took issue with that. And the issue is there really wasn't clarity. So if you look at the ordering provision, which authorized the total contract amount the PUC approved in 2023, the PUC authorized $10,107,654. And the practice, as we apply GWA's protocol, is to be permitted to expend up to a 20% contingency on top of that amount. I know the ALJ has brought up some simple math, saying a 10% contingency plus a 20% contingency is a 30%. I mean, the protocol doesn't discuss any limitations. We are strictly following the language of both the ordering provision and the protocol. The ordering provision says GWA or the PUC approves a total contract amount of $10,107,000. There is nothing there. There's nothing left further for GWA to interpret aside from accept the total authorized contract amount of $10 million. It does not say that GWA is further limited to a 10% contingency of $918,000. It does not say that GWA herein may not apply the 20% contingency. There's no language to that effect, and I've included that in the objection. And that's the issue we're raising. We've appeared before, of course, this body numerous times. And although we have every effort and we strive to comply with the protocol, there are clear instances where we do not perform perfectly. And in those instances, it is fair and correct for the PUC to point out our shortcomings and when violations occur. But in this instance, we cannot concede that a violation occurred because of the plain reading of the ordering provision in the 2023 order. And so, again, I recognize that Attorney Camacho is essentially recommending, notwithstanding his position, that change orders numbers 3, 4, and 5, and 6, change orders 3, 4, and 5 be ratified, and change order 6 be approved. We are asking the PUC to consider the language in the 2023 protocol to strike the analysis at paragraph 19 as presented by the ALJ, and then to incorporate into the PUC's final order that there are no violations in this instance for this docket.
If I may add, I think GWA has probably raised issues about the contract review protocol. Most notably, I think in the 20 through 24 5-year financial plan. Mr. Gowlick, who I believe at least indicated to me that he was around when that contract review protocol was prepared, had indicated that the intent was always for capital improvement projects. And once a project was scrutinized and approved subject to, as part of the contract review protocol, that the intent was never for individual contracts to be further scrutinized. So for example, if we present in our CIP the Ugam Rehabilitation Project and we present an amount that gets scrutinized by the PUC when we file our CIP, they ask questions about the project under the contract review protocol, we answer the questions. Once the project is approved, there isn't a further need to go back and review every contract that's issued in the execution of the overall project. So at the time Mr. Gowlick raised this to me, I didn't have any reason, despite my other misgivings about that consulting group, I didn't have any reason to doubt him in the intent of the original contract review protocol. And I think he recognized that our position had been, it can be a bit excessive if we come before the PUC on multiple occasions to seek approvals for the same project for different contracts, the design contract for one, the construction contract for another, the CM contract, they're all part of the same project. But we can go through the process, if each of those contracts is over $1 million, we come back before this body 2 times for each, and that doesn't include the times that we would come to the PUC for approval to borrow money on the bond market, and then to present the projects, and the list of projects and the approved bond amounts, and then so that's 2 additional approvals that the PUC gets to make on this one project. So at the very least, there's some inefficiencies there that we have in the past highlighted and said, maybe we should take another look at this. Maybe this isn't working the way it was originally intended. And I think this issue that we're raising tonight also lends to that argument that perhaps this needs another look and we can maybe streamline the contract review protocol process. The other example that I'll point out is we have come before this body for our, for example, essential supply contracts for regulatory requirements like chlorine. This is not something that we're doing because it's an option or we don't come before the board because it's a discretionary spending. This is an absolute requirement for the disinfectant that we need in order to make the water safe to drink. But yet, every time we put this out for bid, we follow the procurement law. It's over $1 million, but we still have to come back and seek approvals for this, essential supply. It's a regulatory compliance item. There are things like this which I think we can simplify the process to make it less burdensome and more efficient for us to make sure that we always have the supplies that we need. So in that sense, I think there are other examples of the types of procurements that could be subject to, an exception with a shorter filing or something like that. So we don't have to come back, it takes 2 months for us to get these approved. One with the CCU and then another month to get your approval. So I think we can exercise some, due diligence in the process and examine it and see where we can make it better. So I think a potential solution is for us to bring that as a separate petition to the board to go back and re-examine and maybe, make some recommendations for streamlining the contract review protocol.
Miguel, some years ago, that was tried once before, and then for various reasons, I think I've shared with you conversations we had, it was dropped at that point in time, but the PUC was willing to entertain it. but then it was pulled back from GWA and CCE's. So I think we're more than willing to listen to what your suggestions would be to streamline the process and make it a little smoother. I think we'd be willing to hear that. You can share that with Anthony and Fred, and we can take a look at it.
Thank you, sir.
And then get back to you in the future.
Okay.
Anthony, any comments?
Just a couple of those, Chairman. So number one, when we're talking about the ordering provision, we have a copy of the order dated September the 28th, 2023, GWO docket 23-12. And it does state, and I quote, the contract award of $10,107,654.70 to Sumitomo Mitsui Construction Company Limited, Human Surface Water Treatment Plant Rehabilitation Project was approved, period. The award includes a 10% contingency of $918,877.7. And then the award goes on to detail that 2016 bond funds will partially be used for that total amount of $10.1 billion. And we need a CTA grant, about $300 or so to be used for that, and unallocated bond interest. Amount of about 1.6. So the use is very specific, and it expressly limited the contingency to 10%. That's 10. That's what GWA petitioned for, that's what this is authorized, and that's what was awarded by the EC. Some statement which were made about the GWA's contract review protocol, but it does specifically state at page 3 that GWA shall seek PUC approval in the event a procurement should exceed 120% of the aggregate cost initially approved by the PUC. Cost. The contingency is just that. It might happen, it might not. It's in the case. The only cost that was reviewed and found to be reasonable, prudent, and necessary was at $9.1 million contract cost. That was it. Because otherwise, the contingency, once again, is just that. That's just a little cushion to help expedite what GWA may reasonably need. When they go beyond 20% of that approved cost, that's what they're supposed to see GWA approve. Not 30%, 20%. So in this case, because the CCU said 10%, that's why we honored that instruction. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Anthony. Any comments or questions?
Where are we now with the Ugam project? Because going from 10 million now, we're going up to 12.5 with the approval of order number 6. And I think, Anthony, you said any future would have to come before us. I guess my question is, that's a lot of change orders. You know, you're talking from the original price of 9 million plus up to, you know, almost 30%, as Anthony has stated. And so, where are we? Are we 80% done, 90% done? Do you expect future change orders? You know, I'm more interested in getting the job done. And how much more is this going to cost us?
Well, to use the football analogy, Commissioner, we're at the 1 yard line, so we're 99% complete. The work that is being requested for this change order was not originally contemplated for the rehabilitation of the plant. The project originally was intended to be a in-kind replacement for the existing equipment, a major equipment overhaul, if you will. During the course of the conduct of that work, the facility is as always, subject to Guam EPA inspection. They came out, they did a sanitary survey, which they do every so often, and they had some findings that they wanted to be corrected. And of course, with those findings and with the desired corrections, there's always a timeline with Guam EPA. And because we had a contractor on the job, we issued change orders to that contractor to effectuate the corrections that Guam EPA required. That was the bulk of the prior change orders, and that stuff has been finished. What we're talking about now with change order 6 has to do with the maintenance of the river intake area. And ALJ Camacho characterized it pretty accurately. The turbidity in the river gets high when there's a lot of rain, and that's because of what happens upstream in the watershed. We can't control that. We can't stop that silt from making its way into the river. That takes other measures like replanting the grass and keeping people from burning, that kind of thing, and poachers from burning in the watershed. But the result is that stuff gets washed down and accumulates near the river intake structure. And so every so often, we need to go in there and clean it up, and this has not been done since the time that I have been with GWA, so it's been over 11 years.
Why?
It is not something that needs to be done every year, but it does need to be done. In part, it's the availability of contractors. I think we've asked contractors to assist us with this before, and we've not gotten any responses. In this case, Sumitomo is willing to help us, and there is more of a need for it now, especially after Typhoon Mawar and Typhoon Sinlaku. So we have addressed the problems that this sedimentation and silt buildup causes only in temporary fashion by taking care of it within the structure. The dredging that we're seeking to conduct with this change order will actually happen in the river itself, and so there are a lot of permitting requirements, and it is more of a complex project.
So how are you going to address the turbidity going forward? Because that's inevitable. We're going to have more, with the rain, the
Exactly.
rains and so on. It's not going to go away.
No.
If anything, it's going to get worse.
So GWA has already engaged the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Reclamation, who typically is responsible for dams and watersheds, to do a watershed study for us to support more substantial improvements to the river intake structure, to include raising the dam, providing a raw water reservoir, providing improvements that would channel debris that gets washed down the river into an area that makes the dredging a little easier, constructing automatic screens for the intake station so that we can make sure that we keep most of that stuff outside of the pump station itself. The stuff that happens in the watershed we can't control, so we don't have any plans for that, but what we can control within the intake structure itself, we have engaged the Bureau of Reclamation to do this study for us to support a future brick and mortar grant application to do the improvements with the dam. That's going to be a multi-million-dollar project.
This is just a number of years down, so we're going to continue to come back and have more issues with Uber.
Well, the issues that we have with the plant temporarily shutting down because of high turbidity, that is not necessarily a physical limitation on the plant's capacity, but it is a regulatory control. When it reaches a certain level, EPA just wants us to stop. It isn't that the filters can't handle it. The filters can handle it, and the production rates might be a little lower, but in order to protect the plant, the equipment, and theoretically public health and safety, Guam EPA says if it reaches this level, you should just stop operating, which we do. We have, however, finished water storage that allows us to service the community even if the plant is shut down. And throughout the last two typhoons, Ugam performed beautifully, and we didn't have any major outages associated with water production.
But we know it's going to be an ongoing
Yes.
issue. As to the amendment, my own plain reading of it is I'm not in favor of doing all the changes or saying that they were not in violation. Just based on what Anthony has said, I feel that just a plain reading was 10 million, they spent more, they didn't come back. The fact that even though you're authorized 20, you only asked for 10, why didn't you ask for 20? And so on. So the way Anthony has provided the auditors, the way I would prefer to keep it that way.
Right, I'd also like to, maybe just open the floor to a discussion on the clarity of this contingency. Because I know we've always talked about the 10%, right? And PUC always had 20%. So I always made it a point to always try to strike the 10% from the record because we already had our contingency of 20%.
Just to clarify,
So-
sir, just to clarify, you mean the 10% that the CCU typically authorizes?
Correct. So we always try to like say, well, we already have a 20% in effect, so, and then I also had some concern about compounding contingencies, 20 plus 10.
Yeah.
So we always wanted to make sure we were always within just the 20%. So I'm not sure where that clarity or that misunderstanding is, because I'm thinking that everybody on this panel also understands it as 20% maximum.
So, if I may, Commissioner Montano, so, as Attorney Camacho read into the record, the ordering provision reads that, contract award of 10 million, is approved. But the last sentence reads, the award includes a 10% contingency of $918,877. It does not use the word limit. It does not say this
Right,
contingency.
so you're understanding that because that 10% was there and mentioned, that you were gonna use the CCU's 10% and then come and use our 20% on top of that?
So what we've always done, and I will
Total.
say that the ALJs, they're not consistent. Of course, their reviews are independent, and so sometimes the ALJs approve, no contingency, like you mentioned.
Right.
Sometimes they include it, but every step of the way, we've always added a 20% contingency on top of the total authorized or approved amount, and that's
Right.
exactly what we did here. So the clarity for GWA would be, the award includes a 10% contingency of 918,000, and no further PUC contingency is permitted from here, or no further. So that would have been expressly clear. But when the sentence alone reads, the award includes a 10% contingency, they're simply, commenting on the fact that the 10 million
Right,
is
so,
a contingency, and that's where the
At
clarity
this point, it's
is
just,
needed for us.
right, okay, so.
Full stop, no more.
That's the technical.
And the thing is,
But the intent is,
all right.
you understand the intent of it.
now I do.
Full stop, no more.
It's
The
just,
discussion.
because we've always said that it was we always said that it was, even when you request for 10%, we always try to remove that and say that we already have an automatic 20% in our protocol. So, and that's what it was. So when you guys added 10, we all said, okay, well, then you were just gonna stay with the 10, not add the 10 to our 20. Never was that ever in the
More
intention
clarity,
of it.
more
So, yeah.
clarity.
So part of the, I guess, streamlining process.
Yeah.
And if we don't come to, consensus tonight, or if we think this is not an agenda to clarify what the contingency is, unless we can add it in the docket somewhere, or the order. But it's always been, the PUC's 20% is the maximum. Not on top of whatever,
Let's just disregard the CCUs, if they put 10% in there, let's just agree at this point in time to just disregard what they're in.
because we always try to strike that
But why
anyway.
should we
so
disregard the
Just hold by the 20% that we have always given. And then if you wanna change this contract review protocol going forward, let's have a conversation.
That's part of the trying to streamline process, try not to make you come back and forth for 10%.
Because it's always been confusing from our side too, I think, when the CCU comes forward and mentions 10%.
Unless they have a process,
Ongoing.
is there a protocol that's only 10%?
And that's the concern I have.
Does the CCU have a protocol that's 10%?
Even though they know it's 20%, is only giving them 10%. So why should we give them another 10%? I mean, why is your CCU only asking for 10%? That's where the contract review protocol should start, Because if they had put in 20, we would have approved 20. But since they only asked for 10, that's what we approved. Why, we're not gonna try and second guess what the CCU is trying to do, but although at times we do, but it's your CCU that only authorized you for 10%. And now you think that you can go to 20% because even though the contract review protocol says 20, you think because the CCU authorized you only 10, you're still allowed to go over your CCU?
No,
I mean, you're
no.
countermanding what the board told you to do.
That's not the case. If we get to the CCU approved 10% contingency, we go back to them and ask them for additional approval, which we have done in this case.
But you didn't come back to us for that.
That's correct, but just to keep Mr. Abdullah is correct. There is evidence, as I point out, that they did, when they were gonna go over that 10% amount, they did go to the CCU, and the CCU authorized more.
Right.
But they did not come back to us.
To us.
So he is correct.
So my point is, they didn't have to come back
And
to us.
there has been a lot of
Policies within 20%.
inconsistency.
They would, because,
Not if it's within,
If it's within the
20%, they didn't have to come back to us. When the CCU gave them another 10%, that meets our 20%.
they gave them 20%, which exceeded.
An additional 20% on top of the 10?
Yes.
Correct.
Oh,
Oh, the
okay.
CCU agreed to another 20%
All right, I
on top
think
of
I
the
need a conversation with,
That is
Okay,
correct.
yeah, then we disagree with that.
Go ahead, Teresa.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for clarity, the CCU did approve 2 resolutions, but the total amount approved by the CCU lines up with what we said was the 20% on top of the 10 million awarded. So it did not exceed the PUCs. It
Yes,
ended.
it did.
So the 10 million contract times 20% was
The
within.
10 million already
Would you
had
find-
10%, and then the 20% on top of that makes it 30%.
No, just the 10%.
The 10 million that was
original
originally approved included 900,000, which was the 10%.
contract. Right.
And then they went back and approved another 20% on
Just
top of that.
Let's understand
This is
going
10%.
forward that from our perspective, it's just 20% right now
On the amount that
on the
we've
amount that
requested,
is authorized,
The amount that's
not
authorized.
Or the
including,
contract.
not including the extra 10%.
Not including.
Just the
Just the
contract
contract.
price.
And that if we modify this in the future, we'll have a conversation about it. Right. I'm gonna talk to Francis, just so there's no more confusion.
20% on top of the,
Original
Awarded,
cost.
The awarded, yeah. Is what the contingency is that PUC has.
not including
Automated.
any
Not including.
contingency.
Not including what they, if
10%.
they're below the 20%, we're just assuming you're gonna fall, you're just gonna stay within.
From
that.
our perspective, if they put the 10% in there, just disregard that. Right now, we have it at 20% on our side.
Well, we've practiced, but it's, okay,
So-
I appreciate it.
So it's understood going forward. And then if we make modifications in this contract review protocol, let's talk about it. I think there are things that can be done to streamline.
Just to clarify, you're saying if they put a 10% contingency, just disregard it with respect to the PUC's authorization, not to the CCU's authorization?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, they can do what they want on their side, but just understand
And
that
we would follow it.
on our side, there'll be complications at some point in time. If we're building on this 10%, 20%,
Understood.
otherwise you're gonna have the former OPA
A plain reading.
Okay, anything else? Do we have anything?
Yeah, just during the shutdown, how many, how long is available? You know, how many days, or how many,
You're talking about shutdowns related to high turbidity?
Yeah.
It depends on the length. We consistently or continuously monitor the turbidity, and as soon as it drops below the level that EPA recommends that we stop at, as soon as it falls below that level, we start the plant back up. Sometimes it takes, a few hours, sometimes it takes, half a day. So it depends, but we have currently 2 million gallons in finished water storage. And we have an additional 2 million being constructed right now, so by the end of the year, we'll have 4 million gallons of finished water storage. And if our future plans are realized, what we would be asking for is a full day's raw water storage, so that in the event the plant shuts down during a typhoon, we still have that full day's worth of production we can keep going.
part of the consent decree?
No,
No, this is something separate.
yes, the tank that's being constructed now is part of the 2011 court order, but not the consent, not the 2024 partial consent.
Where are we with that?
On track, we have been producing deliverables. We have one deadline that isn't yet due, but we think we may miss, and so we're already initiating discussions with US EPA about that particular project. And it's just a pump station priority project, and the construction time is just gonna take longer than,
So that was not on the 1 yard line?
well,
No. I understand that.
Had to know.
I recognize my analogy is the wrong sport at the current moment in sports. I'm talking about football.
Anything else? Or is there a motion?
So the current order has the, well, I guess that was clarification on it. But it does include all the current change orders 3 to 5 and 6.
Only to the 1 yard line.
Yeah, and now moving forward on this particular project, that's kind of backs out because we'll see what we need to get back for any additional after that. Okay, motion to approve GWA, where are we, docket 2607?
Second.
Clarity,
Keeping the latest.
keeping it the way it is, not in a rebuttal.
Yeah. Nothing wrong.
Okay, Pete made the motion, Joe seconds, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. I think at some point too, I'd be interested in the tour once it actually is across the finish line. I'd like to see the plan.
So on the plant side,
Yeah.
we're practically across the finish line now. Maybe some minor points of stuff, but that change order work is down at the river. But if you wanna wait till it's all said and done, I'm happy to give you a tour.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of your different facilities and whatnot. It's always nice to take a little tour and see
Absolutely.
what we're authorizing. Yeah.
Well, then,
Over the 20%.
Next item is GWA docket number 2608, petition to authorize GWA's procurement for construction services for water and sewer line replacement for various bridges, phase 1. We have a legal counsel report and a proposed order. Anthony, this one's yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So GWA is requesting in this docket that the PUC authorize GWA to solicit for construction services for phase 1 of GWA's water and sewer line replacement at various bridges. This consists of replacing 10 leaking or corroded pipes. And GWA anticipates that the contract will likely cost approximately $4.5 million, which EPA desires to pay using bond or grant funds. And this is part of GWA's capital improvement program. Basically, the CCU on April 17, 2026 issued a resolution which authorized GWA's management to procure a contractor for phase 1 replacement of water and sewer lines across bridges. So this is just to authorize them to issue a solicitation for these construction services. Because it's $4.5 million, it does exceed the $1 million threshold. I found that the estimated $4.5 million cost is reasonable, because each of the 10 water and sewer lines that will be replaced, they're located on bridges, basically with water below them, so that kind of complicates the construction or these construction services. Phase 1 is also prudent. It's critical that GWA replace old, severely corroded, and persistently leaking water and sewer lines. In fact, these 10 are the top 10 most desired to be replaced. And also, phase 1 is necessary because, of course, any actual water or sewer leaks in the Guam waterways would be a direct violation of the federal clean water act standards, which could result in fines and environmental damage. Based on that, I recommended that the PUC approve GWA's petition, to issue a solicitation for these construction services. And I suppose those were really good consideration. Thank you so much for your question.
Thanks, Anthony.
And just to be clear on this, you don't have to worry about contingency, right?
We will when they come back and,
Yeah, but
they have
for
a
this-
contract, but not
Yeah,
for
but
this.
not for this order.
This is just a
So no worry, this is for clarity.
Any comments at all, Tracy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, LJ Camacho, for the report. We have no comment unless there are questions.
Okay, any questions from the commissioner? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve GWA docket 2608.
Thank you, Pete. Second?
Second.
Joe seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Next item is GPA docket number 2611, petition of the Guam Power Authority to extend the term of ultra-low sulfur diesel storage lease agreement with TriStar Terminal Guam. We have a legal counsel report and a proposed order.
Before we start, Mr. Chair, is Marianne
Marianne, are you with us?
will be on?
Yes, Chairman, I am. I'm here. I'll just turn on my video.
From Toronto, Canada.
There we are.
Thanks, George. Okay, Anthony, I believe this one's yours too.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is. So basically, in this particular docket, GPA is requesting, or basically, GPA's existing contract with TriStar Terminal Guam, TriStar, to lease TriStar's tank 1907, expires on June 3rd of 2026. And GPA is requesting the inter amendment number 5, which extends the lease for an additional 5-year term for a total cost of $7.5 million. That was an optional 2-year extension at a price negotiated by the parties, and GPA intends to pay this using the LEA funds. Now, on September the 28th, 2017, the PUC had authorized GPA to lease a ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel tank from TriStar for a 5-year term expiring December 31st, 2022. And the annual cost was $1.1 million. And GPA subsequently released tank 1906. The PUC subsequently authorized GPA to amend the lease agreement to also lease tank 1907 from TriStar. Both of these tanks are located at TriStar's Hayes terminal facility. Now, GPA owns and operates bulk storage fuel tanks 1934 and 1935. They are both located in Guam. However, GPA cannot use these tanks for ultra-low sulfur diesel storage in lieu of the lease of TriStar because they were out of service and required extensive repairs and refurbishment. Now, on October the 25th, 2018, in GPA document number 19-1, the PUC approved GPA solicitation for the bids for bulk storage fuel tanks inspection and refurbishment. And on December the 2nd, 2019, GPA issued a solicitation and awarded the contract to TriStar. And yes, TriStar was the same entity that we're leasing the tanks from, and because they were the sole bidder, they had a contract to refurbish tanks 1934, 1935, which would have ended their lease. So, during the refurbishment, GP executed 4 change orders, and that increased the total contract price on the refurbishment of 1934 and 1935 to about $15.1 million. In December 19, 2022, the PUC approved an extension of the lease for tanks 1906 and 1907 for an additional 2 years. This expired on June 30, 2024 at a cost of another $1.6 million for tank 1906 and $1.1 million for tank 1907, for a total cost of approximately 2.8 million. On February 29, 2024, the PUC approved another extension of the lease for tank 1906 and 1907 to June 30th of 2026 at a cost of $2.4 million. For tank 1906 and $2.5 million for tank 1907 for a total cost of $4.8. If you see the cost of these leases going up and up, that is correct. TriStar is the only entity on Guam that has this full storage capability. On January 1st, 2025, GPA terminated its lease for tank 1906 because of work. Tank 1935 was completed. Tank 1935 now holds and supplies ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel to GPA's PPE power plant. On December 22nd, 2025, the PUC approved a 6 change order for additional repairs and lead-based abatement. That was before the PUC. On tank 1934, this increased the cost of that contract by $4.1 million. And the total contract cost of the refurbishment of tanks 1934 and 1935 increased to $19.2 million. Tank 1934 was supposed to be, with that change order, done by August of 2026. In their petition and their response to my RFIs, they now say that tank 1935 or 1934 will not be available until January of 2027. On April 17, 2026, the CCU issued a resolution authorizing GPA general manager to enter into amendment number 5, which extends the lease of tank 1907 from TriStar for a 5-year period at a cost of $7.5 million for subject to PUC's approval. Now, initially, I gave my report on May 6, 2026, and I recommended the PUC deny this particular request because the $7.5 million cost was rather exorbitant. And I did, however, recommend that the PUC approve a short-term lease just to avoid a gap between the June 30th deadline and potential completion of the remaining work on tank 1934 to August of 2026. Now, on May the 18th, 2026, GPA filed an addendum providing additional information to justify its request that the PUC approve amendment number 5 at $7.5 million cost. Well, in looking at this, GPA must obtain the PUC's approval to expend an additional $7.5 million on amendment number 5 because the PUC only authorized GPA to extend the contract to June 30th, 2026. Hence, we're going to step past that date and come back and get the PUC's approval. I still find that the $7.5 million cost is unreasonable. And originally, I had based my denial, or my recommendation to deny, on the fact that it looked like back in May that the Strait of Hormuz was going to reopen. I was overly optimistic on that one. Okay. Obviously, the strait remains closed to this day. Now, although the cost is not reasonable, it is probably recoverable. And here's how. So if the cost of the ultra-low sulfur diesel rises above the cost of the 196,000 barrels of GPA base to fill tank 1907, basically, that more or less might pay for the extra absorption costs, the cost savings we will have. Meaning said, if we're buying low, that 196,000 barrels of stored in 1907, and the price continues to go up, there is a savings that GPA will incur that will likely cover the rather exorbitant cost. And I gave a scenario in my supplemental, report. So, so amendment number 5 will cost GPA $1.5 million each year for its 5-year term. The prior 2-year extension from 2024 to 2026, for tank 1907, only cost GPA $1.2 million. So it's just an example of how this is going up. It's 16% more than the annual cost of the last lease extension. And of course, the current US inflation rate is only 3.26, and this amendment exceeds the inflation rate by 12.74 hence. So I found it to be rather unreasonable. Now, basically, GPA argues that the lease extension is not, well, GPA argues a couple of things. So it argues that the general inflation rate indices do not accurately reflect the realities of Guam's limited bulk storage market. However, nothing has changed. It's only been TRISO the whole time. And they keep going, their price keeps going up and up. There's no justification for that increase other than we can ask just about, in my opinion, any cost that we want. We really need to have got paid. And GPA has been paying these costs. Now, GPA also argued that the lease extension is necessary because tank 1907 storage capacity will enable GPA to mitigate supply interruptions, delay cargo arrivals, cycling events, and geopolitical instability, which affects fuel procurement. I found, after the sort of news did not be open, I thought it would, this argument actually has merit. Okay, so good job, GPA. And here's why. So, tank 1907's 196,000 barrel storage capacity. It does provide GPA with an additional 1.47 months of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. Now, basically, with the lease extension, GPA will have approximately 5.5 months of storage available to meet various emergency contingencies. GPA has recently experienced the supply changes for the whole world has, with closing the Strait of Hormuz. And this disruption resulted in GPA's fuel prices rising from $94.57 per barrel in December of 2025 to an unprecedented $275 per barrel price by March of 2026. Now, assuming GPA, because this lease is still ongoing, had filled tank 1907 at the $94.57 per barrel price, tank 1907 storage capacity would enable GPA to save approximately $35.3 million. Okay, so there's cost avoidance. It allows us to store the fuel longer. We buy it at a cheaper price or a lower price. Now, these savings, of course, would recoup the $7.5 million cost of the amendment number 5. There was only net savings to GPA of approximately $27.7 million. So although I still find that the $7.5 million cost is unreasonable, I believe, as it appears, the conflict in the Middle East will continue for the near future. Unfortunately, GPA will likely recoup third savings which limited price of the lease. I also found that the 5-year lease extension is prudent. Basically, at minimum, prudence requires GPA to lease tank 1907 until the work on tank 1934 is completed. Tank 1934 is currently out of service while it's being refurbished, and of course, it's not going to be run now until January 29th of 2027. Hence, without tank 1934, GPA can only store 2.1 months of diesel in tank 1935. With tank 1907, GPA will have approximately 3.48 months of low sulfur diesel, at least until tank 34 returns to service. Further, tank 1907 is located farther inland coastal locations of tanks 1934 and 1935. I actually asked GPA to provide a topographic map of both locations. And tanks, 1934, 1935, they're located 10 feet above the ocean level, but they're facing Upper Harbor. A little harder to get to, not to say something that might not happen in the event of a storm or some catastrophic incident on Cabot Island. Tank 1907, on the other hand, is approximately 130, 140 feet above sea level. So it's a little better situated. And it's farther away, and so it gives GPA redundancy they otherwise would not have. So I found that for these reasons, extending the lease would be prudent. And also found that extending the lease is necessary. With all the tanks, including tank 1907, GPA will have 5.5 months of fuel. These oil disruptions are likely in the foreseeable future. Also with the we're getting the El Nino period, which is expected to last until next year. That's an increase of tropical storms and typhoons. Hence, it would be necessary to extend the lease for another 5-year term. For that reason, for those reasons, I recommend that PUC approve GPA's request to approve amendment number 5 at $7.5 million cost, and that the PUC should also require GPA to obtain the PUC's prior approval to exercise amendment number 5's optional 2-year extension. I also recommend that due to GPA's need for additional ultra-low sulfur diesel storage capacity becoming a permanent need, pursuant to 2 GAR Division 4, Section 5103, Subsection 2 of long-term regulations. The PUC should order GPA to submit a report within 6 months after it issues this order, granting GPA's petition on whether it is more feasible to construct the additional ultra-low sulfur diesel storage capacity or continue leasing for 7. And the proposed order is submitted for consideration of commissioners. Thank you, subject to your question.
Thank you, Anthony. Mary Ann, are you going to make comments regarding this?
I don't, Chairman, but if there are any questions, we're here to answer.
Okay. Are we locked in for this 5-year contract if we sign it, or can we go out on any particular year?
It is a 3-year base contract, so we would only be in there for the 3 years. And then the other 2 are optional. And as PUC legal counsel said, we would come back to the PUC for approval before exercising the options.
Have we made any progress on selling the low sulfur fuel oil that's in tank 1934? Or is that still filled with the oil that used to be burned in Cap 1 and 2?
I think they're still trying to get a buyer for that, but that is something that we are working on.
And once we empty that tank, I would guess that we're going to start proceeding with cleaning it up and refurbishing it, getting it ready for ultra-low sulfur diesel. Any ideas on the timeline on that, on how long that process is? How long did it take for 1935? I don't recall anymore.
I think it took quite a while. So that's because there was a lot of sludge. That heavy fuel does create a lot of sludge, and I think they hadn't been maintained for a long time. And sometimes when you remove the sludge, you find new problems. So you can't really predict exactly how long it would take, but I think you can make an estimate. So I guess the other one took a bit longer than expected, and so we don't know exactly for this one either. But hopefully not too long.
But there's been no potential buyers for the existing product in that tank thus far.
No, not yet. But we are trying. Like somebody will want to buy it.
Who would likely be a potential buyer for this kind of company?
Do ships burn that product? I don't even know who burns that product in.
We're reading it.
Maybe, John, do you have any comments? Go ahead.
Yes.
Hang on your hand.
Who would be the likely customer for such a product?
So we did have two proponents ask questions about that. So this morning they asked for an extension, so we approved the extension. So we're doing a salvage bid, so we will find out in the next couple of weeks.
And John, do you have any idea on how long it might take to refurbish that tank once we empty it?
So tank 1934 is the one that's currently under refurbishment, and that is slated to be completed by January of next year.
Good. You can get it done that quick.
So the tank 1903, which is leased by TriStar, has the current fuel, the ULS
1907.
No, 1907 has the ULSD.
Yeah.
1903 has the ULS,
Oh,
the one that we're trying to.
the low sulfur fuel,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
The one that was being used by TriStar.
Can you transfer it over to 1903 and get it out of the tank so you can start the process?
That'll be a possibility, that you would.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a need for more storage. Mr. Benedetti and I have had several conversations about this. I think ultimately we'd like to shoot towards maybe a year's worth of storage at some point in multiple locations, just to be on the safe side.
That was my question, how long was the ideal amount of storage?
With the new solar plants coming online, eventually over the next 2-3 years, the amount of fuel we're consuming is dropping from 3 million to 1.2 million barrels. And that would probably be the goal we'd be aiming for, is to have a storage capacity of 1.2. Right now, we're pretty limited.
Yes.
With only the one tank down there, and I think Ukadu holds, what, 90,000 barrels? Something like that? Which is only a few weeks with
Yeah, it's supposed to hold about close to a month's supply.
a month, yeah, just shy of a month, I think. And then 2 months down at Avarice in the one tank, that's all we really have right now.
Yes, that's 250,000 pounds, it's about 45 days.
I think we really need this tank at TriStar for the time being. And then we need, as Mr. Camacho indicated, we need to start looking at the potential of building our own tanks in the future.
We talked about that quite some time with this particular, one particular provider, no choice kind of situation. So, as we try to mitigate our fuel costs, by buying or leasing additional storage and trying to purchase it at a low price, if we end up with 5 months of supply and something does happen, is that fuel insured?
Yes, currently the fuel is insured with our property insurance. That's part of the total insured value. So every year we update how much volume of fuel we store. Currently, as of May 31st, we have about $80 million worth of it. And April was almost close to $100 million of fuel.
And all of that was insured?
Yes, all of that is insured.
Anything else?
Well, going back to, if the goal is to have a year's supply, that's gonna be a lot of money.
Yeah, but ultimately, when you look at the fuel game, we could actually save money by doing that, by making the capital investment in that, and then the strategic asset of having it on hand is huge too, depending on fuel politics. It gives us a lot of options and flexibility. So over time, it will pay for itself.
So where would the funding come from?
I'm not questioning that, I'm thinking more
Yeah,
terrorist.
capital improvement
No,
project.
I'm thinking more of terrorists.
Well, you have to guard this precious asset too. Anything else?
Where would the funding come from if we were to like buy storage for 5 months to a year upfront?
Up to them to.
Yeah,
A bond.
that's a good question, something we have to figure out.
I think it's coming out of John's salary. as well.
He'll end up with $2.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Anybody
so
else?
I have a-
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just one thing is just the typo in paragraph 5 of the order. I think that looks like that number 12,000 is probably decimal instead of a comma. That this was- Yeah.
Yeah. I'll fix that.
The other thing I didn't mention is that the standard for approval of this is reasonable, prudent, necessary, that's right. And it seems like out of those three, we're missing the reasonableness. Wonder whether how that affects sort of I'm worried about, I understand that there's requested to approve, but just the wording of the order kind of bothers me as a precedent for us to approve something that we find to be unreasonable. I don't like the idea of having that finding, and yet we're approving it. It's not because I can actually really appreciate the fact that you're a stickler for really focusing on the least price increase, and your reasoning is sound. I mean, if you're comparing it to the inflation rate, and you're looking at the standard, that this is way off of that. But then you've also considered other circumstances, that factor into it. And I don't know whether those other circumstances make it reasonable. If they affect the reasonableness, so that we can, if there's a way that we can word this, if the commissioners would think about whether that makes sense, that we're not, but we're saying that when taken as compared to the inflation rate and looking under normal contract circumstances, this would be an unreasonable request to ask us to approve something that has an increase that's so off track from what the norm would be in a contract negotiation. But we have unique circumstances here, right? So on one hand, we're saying that it's a big increase, would ordinarily be unreasonable, but we kind of have no choice, and there's a lot of factors that sort of make it a right decision, notwithstanding the drastic increase. Does that mean that it is reasonable?
Right. Yes,
So, should we
as Anthony put it, it's not reasonable but recoverable, which sort of tends to put it back in the reasonable bracket. We've had this issue with TriStar before,
Yeah.
and what we've done is we've thrown it back at a time or two. We didn't accept it right off the bat.
rebid.
And we asked GPA to go back to them and tell them the PUC wasn't quite comfortable with the increase in price that they were asking for. They're a monopoly.
Right.
The three variables that make the standard is what Mike is addressing, so, and so, it seems like if we looked at the order provision for page 6 on number 18, if it just said, based on that, based on foregoing increasing, we had cost to pay for the 7 million cost of amendment number 5 is now reasonable instead of not reasonable.
I get the language like that.
Yeah, just maybe changing the language and then move forward.
Yeah, there's like three spots in the order that mention it was unreasonable. And I understand why, and I don't disagree with that included. It's just that I wonder if we might.
No, you're right, we should have said, no one set a precedent either, so.
That, like we could say that it's not reasonable from an inflation standpoint, it's not reasonable under ordinary contract negotiation conditions. But considering all these other factors.
Considering they're the only game in town.
Potential net savings. Right.
Yeah, which makes it reasonable, so.
Yeah.
That is
At the end, just finalize and saying
There may be
that
ways that we can tweak each of those.
that's, it's prudent and necessary. and
We don't have something saying, well, it's unreasonable contract to do this, but we're so.
Mary Ann, John, have we exhausted our negotiating potential with TriStar at this point, do you believe?
Yes, we believe so.
Subject to that tweaking, which I would trust ALJ to do, I would move to approve.
Okay.
Right, so I'm not good places, slow, I'll second.
All right. Peter seconds, all in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Chairman.
Next item is GPA docket number 2613, petition of the Guam Power Authority to increase the levelized energy adjustment clause for the period of July 1, 2026 through January 31, 2027. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Mr. Hurwitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. In this matter, JPA is asking to increase the current secondary levelized energy adjustment clause LEAC factor from 13.5840 cents per kilowatt hour to 19.4150 cents per kilowatt hour for meters read on and after July 1st, 2026 through January 31, 2027. You'll remember that at the beginning of this year in January, the PUC had reduced the LEAC factor from about 15.5 cents per kilowatt hour to 13.5840 cents per kilowatt hour for meters read for this LEAC period. And the reasons for that were essentially a decrease in the average market price of fuel. And what I want to point out is that LEAC is always sensitive to fuel price. That's all that's involved. When the fuel price goes down, LEAC's reduced. When it goes up, it has to be increased. And in the current period, the main reason for this increase was a crisis of rising fuel prices, which GPA is in no manner responsible for. They were confronted with this situation. There was a tremendous increase in fuel prices, and one of the most notable increases in prices in recent years. As GPA's petition had pointed out, the escalation of the Iran conflict and the subsequent closure of the Strait of Hormuz in March 2026 triggered a significant supply disruption in the oil market, driving crude oil prices to unprecedented levels near $275 per barrel. Quoting, "This global volatility has substantially increased GPA's fuel shipment costs from an average of $25 million to an estimated $60 million per shipment." Of course, faced with those circumstances, the CCU has approved GPA's petition to the PUC in this case. In support of its resolution, the CCU indicated that the average market price of fuel used in the current LEAC period from January 1, 2026 through July 31, 2026 was $94.57 per barrel. The projected price of fuel for the period ending January 31st, 2027, the next LEAC period, is expected to be $142.15 per barrel. So this brings up the truth that I mentioned before. Fuel prices increase, LEAC has to go up. When it decreases, they go down. And here, between the current LEAC period and the next LEAC period, we have approximately a 50% increase in fuel prices. So as I analyze this case, GPA only has three options. And the option that's selected, in my opinion, is the one that most protects the ratepayers, is most advantageous to the ratepayers. Under Tariff Z, you recall that the intent is that GPA recovers fully its fuel costs from the ratepayers. This isn't something that GPA profits from by increasing the LEAC. It's a pass-through. And it is just and appropriate that ratepayers pay the cost of fuel that they utilize. Now, the first option we refer to as full recovery. This option would result in there being no fuel under recovery by GPA at the end of the ending LEAC period. That's January 31, 2027. To achieve full recovery, GPA would have to raise the LEAC in this proceeding to 23.1266 cents per kilowatt hour on customer bills. If they did that, instead of paying $58.31 extra per month, the average ratepayer would see a $95 $1.43 increase. But full recovery is actually what is contemplated under LEAC. That's tariff Z. And GPA would have been fully within its right in this matter to seek full recovery, because that's what the LEAC factor is supposed to provide. It even says that any deficit in fuel expense to GPA is supposed to be recovered through LEAC. Ratepayers are required to reimburse GPA for the full costs. That GPA has not sought to recover the full cost of fuel from ratepayers in this proceeding is evidence of its effort to reduce the fuel price impact upon ratepayers. A second option, which is the one selected by GPA, is to raise the LEAC for the average customer by over 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's the 19.4150 cent figure. This would still leave an under-recovery balance of $27,049,000 as of January 31, 2027. So again, GPA is showing some lenience to the ratepayer by not trying to recover the full amount. If there were full recovery, if the LEAC were maintained at the present level, there would be a $69 million under recovery. That's no increase in the recovery charge. Previously, the highest level of the under recovery ever was $47 million. So GPA has tried its best again to reduce the amount of the LEAC increase. Even if GPA's request to increase LEAC were granted, GPA's power rates will still be far lower than those in Micronesia and other Pacific Island areas. With the base and fuel surcharge rates, GPA's cost to ratepayers per kilowatt hour, this is if you approve this LEAC increase, would be 32 cents total. That includes base rate and the LEAC rate. Other jurisdictions in the Pacific area range from 42 cents per kilowatt hour to 66.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So again, GPA has successfully come up with power rates that are lower than many of the jurisdictions in the Pacific area. And if you look at the ALJ report, I attached an exhibit. And that was Exhibit B, which shows a little chart comparing the power rates in Guam to those in the Hawaiian Islands, all of them, Hawaii, Maui, Oahu, Molokai, and Lanai, as well as in Saipan and Micronesia. You see that GPA's rates are relatively low compared to all of those jurisdictions. So my point again is GPA has been taking steps to try to reduce the power rates. Now the third option for GPA here, as I mentioned, would be to leave the LEAC rate at 13.584 cents per kilowatt hour, which would result in no increase to ratepayers in this proceeding. This has been advocated by members of our community that the PUC should just not increase the LEAC at all. But in fact, that approach has big problems. It would result, as I mentioned, in a $69,536,000 under recovery for GPA in its fuel expense by January 31, 2026. GPA would have a huge financial hole in its pocket and potentially diminished ability to purchase fuel in the future. Now, if GPA did not in fact have the financial resources to purchase fuel, it would be forced to subject the ratepayers to load shedding, which is a result that no one wants. Now, even if GPA borrows money to purchase fuel through its line of credit, the cost of such borrowing would have to be paid back by ratepayers over subsequent LEAC periods. This option does ratepayers no favor, as GPA would have to repeatedly increase the LEAC factor in subsequent LEAC proceedings to recover the under recovery balance from ratepayers. So it seems to me there's really no other option. GPA has selected the best option available, but that's not all they've done here. GPA has taken substantial additional measures to reduce the impact of the LEAC fuel expense on ratepayers. You'll recall that GPA received roughly $20,640,000 from KEPCO, resulting from liquidated damages for delays in the commercial operation of the Ukadu plant. What GPA has decided to do is to use those funds to pay ratepayer power bills, to pay the LEAC charges, to offset against the LEAC charges. GPA didn't have to do that. Some could question whether they should do it, but there's nothing in any law or regulation that requires GPA to apply its liquidated damages to customer fuel bills. So again, I think it did this out of a concern for the rate impact of the fuel crisis upon its customers. And as I mentioned, under Tariff Z, generally it is the ratepayers that pay their own fuel expenses. Now, I will point out that there has been a deviation by the PUC in that practice in the past. And I would say extraordinary times demand extraordinary measures, which we have in this case. The PUC back in COVID times, in docket 2104, did allow GPA to apply $15 million from the $10 million from the self-insurance fund, $5 million from internally funded CIP funds, total $15 million. So my point is, it's not unprecedented that GPA has in the past applied its funds to the LEAC as an offset to the LEAC. In addition, as I had mentioned, in GPA docket 2612, GPA obtained approval from the PUC to establish its line of credit in the amount of $70 million to pay in advance for fuel shipments. That again seems to be an effort by GPA to ensure that sufficient funds will be available to purchase the fuel needed to meet the customer power demand. Also tonight before you, in addition to the ALJ report, you have the report of Mariana's Consulting Group. And MCG appeared to concur with the LEAC rate proposed by GPA for the next period of the next LEAC period. But it did find that the under recovery might even be more. They suggested it could be $34.5 million as of January 31, 2027. So remember, all the under recovery will have to be recovered later from the ratepayers. There are some other interesting points in the report. One is that for the first 4 months of 2026, GPA consumed 309,806 less barrels of fuel compared to the similar period in 2025, a 33.8% reduction in fuel. So that's GPA taking actions and having the Ukadu plant built to reduce fuel consumption by ratepayers. That makes savings to the ratepayers. So just another example. I think, when I look at the record here, GPA has really done everything it could to mitigate this situation. So in concluding, I would conclude that the PUC should approve GPA's petition to increase the current secondary levelized energy adjustment cost factor from 13.5840 cents per kilowatt hour to 19.4150 cents per kilowatt hour for meters read on and after July 1, 2026 through January 31, 2027. From a historical perspective, if you look at this, the proposed LEAC factor of 19.415 cents per kilowatt hour is actually lower than the LEAC factor for the entire period of April 1, 2022 through February 1, 2025. My point is, for at least almost 3 years, the LEAC was higher than what is proposed in this case here. So looking at the proposed order submitted to you, I would propose that you adopt it. It implements the recommendations that I have made and does establish the secondary fuel recovery factor of 19.4150 cents for the next LEAC period. It also sets the other LEAC factors for primary and transmission level customers. For the entire LEAC period, these changes do represent a 42.9% increase in the LEAC factor for the average residential customer using 1,000 kilowatts a month, but a 22.4% increase in the total bill. And as I mentioned, it appears that the actual increase in the fuel price is over 50% in this matter. In this case, just a side point, both GPA and MCG had changed the projection basis for calculating estimated fuel costs for the LEAC rates. We've always used the Morgan Stanley rates before, but in this case, both parties agreed that the MOPS, M-O-P-S, which is the mean of Platts Singapore market rates, would be used. The reason was that the supplier of GPA, Hyundai, uses that factor. I wasn't quite sure whether they wanted to use MOPS in the future for future LEAC proceedings, but in consultation with MCG, they indicated to me that they're recommending that the Morgan Stanley market rates continue to be utilized in future LEAC proceedings to calculate estimated fuel costs for the LEAC rates. So by adopting this order, you would adopt the MCG recommendation. And as a final recommendation, MCG had indicated that in future LEAC proceedings, GPA should indicate in each proceeding what are the fuel savings from the Ukadu plant. So in other words, to let us know how many barrels have been saved through the operation of the Ukadu plant. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Mary Ann, Mr. Kim, any comments?
Yes, thank you. That's a wonderful report. Just for clarification, while we were using MOP versus Morgan Stanley, during the most incidents, there was a big gap estimation between MOPS and versus Morgan Stanley. There were almost like $20 barrel difference between those projections. However, when we're buying fuels, we're using MOPS. So for the first couple of months, we have to use MOPS because that's more realistic. But in the after a couple of months, we're still using the Morgan Stanley because due to uncertainty, things will converge later on. And it is converging now. So the Morgan Stanley MOPS are having the same number. But at that time, when we were doing the filings, there was this big gap differences. And Morgan says they're doing the best estimation. So they were there predicting what the market's going to be. But the MOPS is actual market. So since we're buying MOPS, so we have to use that number for governments. But eventually it converges. Right now it's almost the same. So in the future we'll still use Morgan Stanley, but it's a deviation we just did.
Also, the MOPS is just a temporary thing that you'll be using.
For this filing, we just did it temporarily to figure out what under recovery is going to be. So that was what we're buying, and they were just good to see between two numbers.
Is it still 27 million under recovery versus the 35?
Right now, as of May, under recovery is about $6 million because we applied $20 million to it. So we're still projecting under recovery around that number. Because we purchased in April, when we purchased it was $54 million. And the recent one that came in is about $38 million. million. So we're still gonna have under recovery, by, end of this month.
When's your next purchase?
We'll be purchasing, around July 16th, next purchase.
It's just next month, it's just a couple of weeks.
Yes, it is.
And what do you estimate,
Right now, we're.
going up or down?
Actually, the significantly has dropped. Currently, the amount's price as of today was about $113. That's $8 on premium, about $150. It's even a month ago, it was like when we first started, the order was like $300 per barrel.
Yeah, but it was up 300 for a period.
And as time went by, it dropped, and our average price about $240.
Yeah, didn't you pay 200 plus per barrel on the last shipment?
Yes, that's when it was like, when we purchased for 50, the last shipment was $58 million.
And so you're estimating this next shipment to be what,
Around, I believe $30 million.
30, at what price per barrel?
About 120, 121.
That is a big drop. Thank you.
And I think before it was the 58 million, you were at about 25, I think, the previous year. Yeah. You know, it was a very nice thing that GPA did for the community by applying liquidated damages at Ucadu for the fuel. If you run that across the 52,000 customers of GPA, that's a benefit of about $400 per customer.
That's
And
huge.
the other thing is, if you look at the efficiency of the Ugo plant, by being, burning 33.8% less fuel than it had previously in the period of the previous year, that's roughly equivalent to the same amount. That's probably equivalent to another $400 per customer. So, you can think about for those. That's big. And if you look at the average bill of the customer after the increase, it's going to be about $318 now. That's never welcome news for anyone, but if you compare it to other neighbors we have in the Pacific, including Hawaii and Saipan, they'd be running $477 right now. So GPA is doing a pretty good job. Go ahead.
We've been down this road before when we acted was about in the 30 cents area, one prior to coming online, we had a bunch of issues. And so one of them was this under recovery. And so we tried to make sure that GPA got it down to something reasonable so that we could prevent load shedding and make sure you had enough funds to purchase fuel for the generators. And so the current, it seems like the 23 cents that would be necessary, if LEAC was at 23 cents, that would take us to zero under recovery by January.
There's a big state of flux going on, too,
Yes.
so it's hard to read. But,
And then versus, and then now we're at 19 cents, and then we're gonna be put at the 27 million again, so. Whether all the different variables that happen, somewhere down the road, I just wanna make sure we're not kicking the can down the road somewhere where we're gonna end up with such a high under recovery that we're gonna have to raise the LEAC over and beyond.
yeah,
And have
looking,
some kind of sticker shock, so.
looking in the recent past, when Mr. Recchi was mentioning the period of time between 2022 and 2025, when our rates were pretty high in the LEAC, that was all from recovering from trying to extend and help the community out during the period of time during COVID. And it took us 3 years to catch up with that, and we went to $47 million in the hole, which is, I think we all realize, I think we're all agreed, that's probably our limit on a cash flow basis. We can't really go below that number. We really shouldn't even approach that number. That's really putting us at risk. So I think we can deal with this the way it's presented. I mean, and you've done a lot to help the community out. I think that's obvious to all of us. So I really appreciate it, Phil. And I think we all do.
Yeah, and definitely coming in and asking for something lower than what you need is definitely commendable, so appreciate that. And then maybe with the different variables and that happen in the next, January 2027, we'll know that's probably covered
It's
this.
possible we might be able to alter it before then. I mean, we'll see how it runs.
Yes, yes, there's a lot of variables still going on. We'll have more clarity within 2 weeks.
We get updates on projected under recovery every month, so.
We always ask Mr. King that.
Gold marks for me, it's not goes down.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Any other comments? Is there a motion? Be brave, Keith.
I moved to raise the rates. No, I was
We move to save the ratepayers by raising the rates just a little bit versus what is necessary. Okay, so having said that, I'll move to approve GPA docket 2613.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a second?
Second.
Joe seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Okay, next item, GPA docket number 2614, petition of the Guam Power Authority to approve Phase 4 Renewable Energy Acquisition Award to Sun Energy 1, 2, 3, and 4 for up to 62 megawatts of renewable energy capacity. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sorry.
I do have to make, last thing I want to do is I just found out just very recently that our law firm was contacted by the company involved in this docket, one of the affiliates, to change our services potentially going forward, due to some of their financing and involved in this project. For that reason, that's not been turned into a commitment at this point, but the fact that it's pending, I think that's a great thing for me to do.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Pangilinan is recused from this topic. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So as what's in the ALJ report before the commissioners now, by way of background, the current petition is one of 4 that has come before the PUC concerning GPA's Phase 4 renewable energy acquisitions and GPA's internal goal of 50% renewable energy by 2030. The previously dockets that came before you and were conditionally approved, even though I think one has already gone through full approval, are found in GPA docket 24-25, 25-16, and 26-02. This project, as well as the other 3, were part of GPA's application to the PUC in GPA docket 23-01 for the procurement of Phase 4 renewable acquisition multi-step bid GPA 012-23. In response to that solicitation, GPA received approximately 11 bids, and 4 of these are presently before us now in this docket. At that time, GPA did determine that Power Solutions LLC and SK Echo Plant to be a qualified and responsive bidder, with the proposal submitted for the 4 separate generating facilities totaling 62 megawatts of solar energy. According to the current petition, in May of 2026, GPA received official notice that the consortium changed and that SK Echo Plant was terminated, and the lead project sponsor, Power Solutions, had entered into an agreement with Shinhan Asset Management, NH International Company, GS Engineering and Construction Corp. This updated consortium to now be referred to as Power Solutions and Korea's top-tier consortium. Under this updated consortium, Power Solutions created special purpose companies for each contracted generating site: Sun Energy 1 for Site 1, Sun Energy 2 for Site 2, Sun Energy 3 for Site 3, and Sun Energy 4 for Site 4. According to the petition, the ownership interests in these individual companies are held by Sun Energy Holding, which is wholly owned by Power Solutions. In the petition, GPA maintains that the updated consortium remains a qualified and responsive bidder. 3 of the projected generating sites are co-located within the Chamorro Land Trust Commission real property formerly used as a golf course known as the Guam International Country Club. According to the petition, the CLT has granted GPA a perpetual easement and unrestricted right to access and use. And this is recorded in the Department of Land Management under document number 1019577. In the petition, GPA attaches the very long draft renewable energy purchase agreements or contracts that were negotiated between GPA and Power Solution for the four project sites. The draft contracts are pending submission to the Office of the Attorney General for procurement review under 5 GCA section 5150. As set forth in the petition, the contracts for each site are modeled on and are substantially similar to the contracts that were approved previously by the Office of the Attorney General and conditionally approved by the PUC in GPA dockets 2425, 2516, and 26-02. I would note though that in the past dockets, in particular the first of these awards to come before PUC for approval, the Chief Administrative Law Judge did raise the concern that PUC consultant Daymark had raised as to why GPA had pushed the renewable goal of 50% energy 5 years earlier than what the Guam legislature had established in Public Law 35-46. Nonetheless, and moving forward, under the contract review protocol for GPA, the PUC must review any GPA contract or obligation that exceeds $1.5 million. Here, the total contract value for all four generating sites is estimated at $631,741,175 for 25 years with an option for 5 additional years. The individual sites for the entire 25-year period, or the total amount that GPA is estimated to pay to the contractor for each site, are estimated as follows. For Sun Energy 1, $270,298,915. For Sun Energy 2, $270,255,238. And for Sun Energy 3, $46,292,197, and for Sun Energy 4, $44,894,825. Even the individual sites on their own require PUC approval. The PUC has, in the past, comprehensively approved the Phase 4 Renewable Acquisition Program. If you recall in GPA docket number 22-08, PUC approved GPA's 2022 Integrated Resource Plan, which did focus on the procurement of renewable energy contracts, such as the present one. As set forth in the ALJ report, the PUC has previously approved the 3 other Phase 4 renewable energy acquisition awards, all of which from the proposals submitted in multi-step bid number GPA 012-2023. The PUC has consistently found in the previous awards that the Phase 4 renewable energy acquisition awards are reasonable, prudent, and necessary. The current petition is no different. In the current petition, strong justification is provided that the present award is reasonable, prudent, and necessary to meet legal mandates, control costs for ratepayers, improve energy security, and that the contracts contain provisions that protect the ratepayers. This award does align with GPA's energy goals and regulatory requirements. Public Law 35-46 did increase GPA's renewable portfolio standard goals to 50% net electricity sales from renewable energy by 2035 and 100% net electricity sales from renewable energy by 2045. GPA set the more ambitious goal of 50% renewables by 2030. The award of 62 megawatts to Sun Energy 1, 2, 3, and 4 LLC is projected to increase GPA's renewable energy ratio to sales by up to 46% by 2028. The award is reasonable, prudent, and necessary for meeting GPA's mandated internal renewable energy goal. The award also provides economic and ratepayer benefits. GPA in the petition highlights that this award will help to meet the anticipated load growth due to military expansion, increase in data centers, and increase in electric vehicles. The current sun energy projects are necessary for GPA to meet this anticipated increasing load demand. In the petition, GPA also asserts that by not approving this Phase 4 award will result in higher energy bills and increased pricing for renewable energy in the future. GPA continues to highlight the shifting costs for the energy storage system, ESSS, shifting capacity costs, as a clear example of the never-ending increase in costs for renewable energy projects. Likewise, in the CCU GPA resolution number FY 2026-19, which was attached as Exhibit 1 to the petition, the introductory clauses set forth that the current construction environment on the island has and continues to drive costs higher. Securing this award now is a necessary, prudent, and reasonable means to provide a direct benefit to the ratepayer by meeting the increasing load demand and control the increasing cost of renewable energy. The award also provides energy security and oil import reduction. According to the petition, GPA currently imports about 3 million barrels of fuel oil per year. Estimates, are that Guam spends as much as $365 million a year to foreign economies in exchange for fossil fuels. This figure represents capital flight out of the local economy. The new Ukadu power plant and the Phase 4 renewable projects together are projected to reduce oil imports by up to 1.7 million barrels annually by 2029. This project is expected to contribute to improving energy security and reducing exposure to global events that could drive oil prices higher, which would negatively impact energy costs. This award also contains in its contract safeguards to protect the ratepayers. As set forth above, the proposed contracts and interconnection agreements attached to the petition are modeled on previously approved agreements by the PUC and the Office of the Attorney General in GPA docket number 2425, 2516, and 26-02. The proposed agreements attached to the petition are structured to ensure performance and cost controls that overall protect the ratepayers, such as performance guarantee minimums, bid price caps, and minimal annual escalation costs below the U.S. average. These contract provisions and others provide safeguards to protect the ratepayers. Based on the record before the Commission, this administrative law judge recommends that the PUC should grant conditional approval to proceed with the Phase 4 Renewable Energy Acquisition Award to Power Solution and Korea's top-tier consortium under the company's Sun Energy 1, 2, 3, and 4 LLCs for up to 62 megawatts of renewable solar energy. Final approval should not be granted until GPA submits the final Sun Energy contracts to the PUC and the ALJ approves and certifies that the Sun Energy contracts do not contain any material change from the draft Sun Energy contract submitted with this petition. A draft order is provided with the ALJ report, and I'm available as well as GPA for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Mary Ann, any comments?
I have no comments, but if the commissioners have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners?
This consortium, I gathered they were vetted, but who actually are they? Who are the main players, and has GPA ever dealt with them before? Or are these new players to the solar market?
I think you're speaking to Mary Ann.
Is it Mary Ann?
Okay, the consortium members, actually right now it's still Power Solutions that owns 100%, and they are going to enter into an agreement with the other members of the consortium to take over the project. The companies that are involved, there's SK and NHI. They are both huge Korean companies. They have some experience with solar energy and providing that type of service, so they're not brand new. And they are really, really big.
Is this the first time that GPA will be dealing with them?
Yes.
Is there a concern at all with the calendar at this point? Because I think for the tax incentives, they either need to get the project finished by the end of calendar year 2027, or they need to start by July 1st, is it, of this year?
Okay, so Commissioner, you're correct that was one of the requirements, that you have to begin construction as defined in the IRS regulations by July 1st, but a court recently struck that down, so that's not it's not being enforced at the moment while that litigation is ongoing. So for now, there seems to be a reprieve. I don't know I can't predict what's going to happen with it, but right now, nobody needs to do that. So I think they're okay for now.
So is the final commissioning date at the end of 2027, is that stricken down also?
No, that one still stands. We do have one project that is, I think it's slated to meet that one. That's our KEPCO project. This one probably wouldn't because, well, I don't know, I can't predict, but it's only just beginning. The thing is that if the begin construction is it might have been struck down as written, but it may still like become one of the criteria. And I want to say that the date may change, so they may have a different deadline. So this is like effectively a deadline extension for beginning construction. I think that's the way it was meant to work, while they work out whether that's going to be valid or not.
Okay. But basically, all the contracts were involved with various companies. They're locked into the pricing as is, regardless of whether they would have or lose the tax incentives.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
Yes, and so, I read, this is approximately a fixed price at approximately 18 cents a kilowatt?
17.9.
Yeah, 17.9 cents or so. That's our ceiling, and so they're somewhere near the ceiling. And there's like a 1% escalator per year for the 25 years.
For the,
It ends up being something like 19 cents by the end.
Yeah, that's standard with all the contracts.
okay, so, on one schedule, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different solar projects going on before the additional 4. At what's, are they on schedule? Are these various contractors on schedule so far? Nothing out of line? I mean, as far as their estimated completion time?
KEPCO is really looking, go up there,
Yeah, go on Cross Island Road sometime nowadays and watch the big one. That's KEPCO, the 135 megawatt one.
Yeah.
acres.
Yeah, the two that I am interested are actually the 3. KEPCO is 132 and Cortec is 60. So those are the, because the others are like 4.6, yeah.
That's for
And then Mojave. Mojave
Not here yet.
is not here?
That's the last proponent.
Oh, okay. So right now, the 2 biggest ones are KEPCO and Cortec, and are those, quote, on schedule so far?
Yes, that's correct. They are.
Vortex has started? Have they broken ground?
Cortec program.
Okay.
And, just for future, when do you expect these 2 to be finished approximately?
January 2028. Yeah, 2028, January.
28 for both of them, or just for one?
TEPCO is 2028 and Portec is 2029.
2029. And then Power Solutions, the one that's before us
They're about
now.
ready to kick off. They've already done their planning. They gave us a letter today that they're going to get moving.
Okay. And when is that expected? 2030?
Well, they can't really begin until they get the Attorney General's approval.
Oh, okay, yeah, we just signed that earlier this year, so 3 years from now.
3 years from now, 29.
They all have a 3-year construction schedule.
3 years, okay. All right, thank you.
Since this contract is, it's not a conditional approval, it's basically a pre-approval on the condition that we get the Attorney General's approval and then a signed contract, the final contract, without any changes, correct? And then, is that when, at that point, I mean, are we having, is there any issues with the Attorney General's office, the AG's office? Is there any indication?
Commissioner, I would say that this contract is very, very similar to all the other contracts that have been approved by the Attorney General's office. And so we don't foresee any stumbling blocks in that regard.
Okay. Good. Other questions? Motion to approve GPA docket 2614 to add more solar to Guam.
Peter? Second?
That was the governor's presentation on YouTube
What's that?
before the Congress.
Yeah, before, oh, really? Good. Very well, this is so.
I think I sent it to the chairman.
Need a second.
Need a second?
Second?
Joe seconds, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, DPA. Mary Ann, you want to hang around for a while?
Sure, I can hang on for a while.
What time is it there?
What time is it?
It's let me see, it's 6:39 a.m.
You see the sun just rising. It was dark.
You can see behind me, it started out dark and now it's getting light.
What's the weather like there? What's the weather like there?
Oh, the weather's lovely. It's cool and breezy all the time and sunny every day.
Okay.
Good.
Well, next item is update on the waste and energy white paper.
Administrative matters, if you want to sign off, you can. If you want to hang out, you can.
Well, she's still with us, so let her hang out. If only we could give her some of our delicious food here.
Help yourself, please.
Oh, there's she went.
All right, Mr. Chair, so last month I contacted NSW Consultants. Basically, that was to explore the possibility of doing a white paper on waste and energy. And although that's a controversial topic, years ago, we're not talking about an incinerator. It was discussed at the GPA symposium back in April, that there are newer technologies in terms of waste and energy. Anaerobic digestion. When I first heard that, I thought about the blog in 1986 but it's not. They did tell me that it's more like the stomach of a cow. It's good at getting rid of organic matter and cutting the waste there. So the objective, of course, would be to develop PowerPoint presentation that NSW will lead. These you can show to younger legislators, and they estimate that with this work would not exceed a budget of about $6,100 if they were to prepare this.
So how did this come about? What's the rationale for it?
We've been having some conversations about this for many years, actually, privately. We just feel like we should probably take a little leadership along this path and mention to some of the policy makers in the community as to different technologies that are available, and they might want to take another look at this and go save landfill space.
Because this is more having to do with from solid waste? Okay.
Are we spending life?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we streaming live though? He says he's not kidding.
GuamPUC.com.
Do you want us to make a motion authorizing the payment to MSW?
Yes, answer any questions. I do want to add as well that the idea for this particular waste and energy facility would not be to provide a grid fuel power. It would be really to put stuff into the landfill. We're basically turning that into energy in the hopes of prolonging the life of the land.
Right.
That's the objective. So it's very different from that last contract, which looked like it was going to be a huge incinerator providing a lot of power, and then we would be getting the trash from off island or something. So it's not like that contract at all.
But is the technology?
Have you had some previous discussion with Guam Solid Waste on this? Are they, what is their, is this something is on their horizon?
Yeah, actually, at the symposium, basically they're discussing how Guam Solid Waste Authority does have an existing waste to energy program, but that's more or less the oil, which they turn into biofuel, and they use that to fuel some of their vehicles that they actually pick up garbage with. So that's one very nascent program, but nonetheless it does keep the oil out of the landfill. This is one potentially they could expand on that existing program. As well as, once again, the main objective is to prolong the life of landfill. Now, Commissioner Pangolin, to answer your question, it's not the incinerator, it's anaerobic digestion.
Yeah, I'm just curious about, trying to visualize what that would be. It's like a facility where the garbage gets dumped into it and then.
There'd have to be a lot of separation because it's mostly food waste and organic stuff like cardboard. And basically, this material would be fully digested, if that makes any sense, through this process. There would be some residue, of course, but it would be far less in terms of space than the stuff by itself.
How is it becoming energy?
I believe it turns into a gas.
Methane,
Or, probably a gas that can be used.
CH4 that can burn it? Is it like the same kind of bacteria or gathering that we use in the treatment plants?
Probably so.
Like feed all this bacteria to eat all this stuff?
Yeah, it would be something similar to that, but this would be another, this is entirely different process, but very similar, so they, there is a residue, that eventually does, I think, go into the landfill, but it's not as much as it would be without that process, so it's something, it's a concept, something similar, not exactly the same process.
But it would require some kind of separation on the part of the consumer.
Yeah, either at the consumer level or at the Guam Solid Waste Authority level. That would be something that we would have to look at. The other thing would be GPA.
Food waste versus all of the trash.
Yeah, and it would also be GPA that constructs the plant, not Guam Solid Waste Authority. GPA has the engineering resources and know-how, saying that.
Is there an existing plant like this?
Yes, actually, I remember if it was Americans, like it's Samoa or American soil, I believe,
How much trash do they need to make one for a lot?
I'm not too clear on
The
that.
energy aspect is,
It's incidental.
you do it just to get rid of the,
Yeah.
that's the purpose,
I feel like we need it.
The energy is to this, it's not that.
That would be correct, it's just more or less prolonged life in the landfill. It does ancillarily produce a degree of power.
Right. So, is there a motion to do that?
But to approve the
Authorize the $6,000.
Let's approve the $6,100 to
Thank you, Joe.
MSW.
Mike seconds, all in favor, say aye. All right, I look forward to this white paper. And then the last matter is just an FYI, GPA docket number 1001 and 1409. GPA's filing of second quarter revenue bond usage reports. That's it. Is there, what?
One comment, I'm sorry. This is regarding the resignation of Sheila.
Sheila? Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you saw my comment. And the comment generally said for Anthony to explore.
Yeah, but that's on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda today, so we can't discuss it.
Oh, has to be on the agenda?
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll disallow the LEAC.
Okay, all
All
right.
We're
So
taking
can it be on the
our
next, can it be added on the
Yes, it
next?
can.
We'll have to on it in the administrative side.
Yeah. And again, it's just,
We understand. We need to discuss it. Okay.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you both.
is there a
Yeah. There will be a meeting. We're planning on